painted with rust colors on top of a primer, and then we put the blue on top, and then what we did is we put some chipping fluid over it, brought that back, so we got some of the colors coming through, and then I've attacked it with 3 different colors of pigment. And if you can get really in close, yeah, there we go. So you can see it's quite cruddy. Yes. It's quite nice. The inside is as cruddy as everywhere else. As you can see. So we did a little bit, as I said, I did a little bit of damage to the front here, did a little bit on this back here as well. And then if I'm very careful, because I'm just thinking to myself, I'm going to drop this in a minute. We've done the same effect over on the other side as well. So that side we got a little bit too carried away with, but luckily with the joys of pigment, you can hide some of the melted plastic because I use a rotary tool, and it's actually come up looking pretty well for what I wanted. So that's the front. And the front wheels have been stuck on. They will be rusted. I haven't, because you can just see the rust come through there from that red. It's much brighter red than it should be, but I've done that on purpose because I'm going to obviously bring it back down with the rust and oil and muck and whatever. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to use some chipping agent. So I painted this with some rusty colors, as you can see, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw over that some chipping fluid, which I think I may have already done actually, but I'll do it again anyway. It won't make any difference. So I'm actually going to use this is some rolled chipping and scratching fluid. It works perfectly fine. I know it's got a roll on it. Many people will probably have shuddered just at the sheer sound of it. But it does work fine. Before we go any further, let's get a bit of air, because we need air. I'll be turned on. Fairly excited. I'm turned on.
Right, place. And it is K1.
Okay, so so yeah, just going to put a little bit of fluid in here. I don't need an awful lot because obviously we're not doing an awful lot of parts. We're going to throw it over these 3 bits. Those 2 bits. So all I'm going to do is just lightly, just go over it lightly, making sure you get a nice even coat across everything, like that. Might be a bit stingy here with chipping fluid. Finish a few bits and pieces on this. I will finish sort of within the Australian time, but I will carry on finishing the weekend. And it's not about finishing. A little bit over the steering wheel that we haven't done yet. And then obviously once we get to the point that these guys are finished, that's fine. Use the rest of this that's in here up. So it's effectively 2 light coats over it. 1 probably would be enough, but I put 2 in because I've got a little bit left in the airbrush. So that's that. Let me bring that over here too. I'll clean the airbrush quickly. That is my airbrush. It's not my stomach or anywhere else.
That's your excuse, and you're leaving with it.
Oh, I'm definitely sticking with it. I wasn't doing anything else. So now I've been introduced to this. This is called a hairdryer. I don't actually know what it does other than for models. So,
an eyebrow dryer for you.
It's not mine, obviously. I'm just going to go mute while I quickly dry this quickly with the head dryer.
Cool. So a couple of comments. Griffey is saying we should get some of the USA hangovers in for a little bit. It's yeah, totally up to the American live stream if they wanted to join us. But what do you say, Ian, Callum, Craig? What do you reckon? Get them in?
Yeah, I don't care.
Not a problem.
Crazy
More the
Locher
merrier.
is saying, morning all, you wonderful people, and howdy everyone. And
Howdy.
he's saying at Griffio, definitely a perfect wind down stream for me with a big grin. Wombat Thunder is saying g'day from Melbourne and Wombat Creek. G'day Wombat Thunder. That's pretty cool. And you're very welcome. Now, if you don't mind, gentle people, I'm going to just go and get a cup of tea or coffee or some such. I'll be right back.
No problem, mate.
No
I'll leave my
problem.
camera on though, just because it won't be long.
No worries at all. Okay, so I've just given it a very quick blast with the hairdryer. It is dry to touch, just about, which is cool. Obviously, I'm doing this quickly. You might want to leave it for a little bit longer and not force dry it. The reason is that you will have pooling in recesses and stuff with the chipping fluid, which may not have dried properly, but that's okay. We'll get around that if we come across that problem. Obviously, I've got my top coat color there ready to rock and roll. I'm going to pour a little bit of that in the cup. And then all we're going to do is we're going to paint as we normally would paint. Nice light coat. Build up your colour to the colour you want. Ooh. My trigger finger is a little bit overactive. And there we go. So that's got our base colour on it. While I've got this in here, I'll do the other bits as well, really later. Let's got that one done. Right, there we go. So we've got our base colour on there. So we'll clean the airbrush out very quickly. Obviously, just for clarification purposes, so the rough colours I used was a lacquer onto an acrylic primer, because that's what I had. And this is an acrylic paint going on top of the lacquer. Now, the type of paint I'm using shouldn't really make a great deal of odds, in that you should be able to do it with one of those types, if or use both, whichever. "13 people watching." Okay. And like most things, if I had realised this is what I'm doing, I would have prepared one piece for each stage, so it will be quicker to show you. So bear with me while I just do this housekeeping. Although I don't need the airbrush, I don't want to leave it set in paint either. So that's done. I can put that away. that can have its top and bottom put on. Not necessarily in that order. And then what we're going to do, I'm going to mute myself again because I'm going to use the trusty hairdryer. Be back in a second.
They're not going to be happy with me. I gave it a very light sanding with a 3000 grit and cleaned it with water just to see what it looked like, and then repainted the varnish, but very thin, and it has managed to lose any whiteness from the matte varnish. And then underneath, I gave the whole thing a filter with Tamiya panel liner. Just cleaned it up a little bit more and given the underside a bit more, texture. Yeah. It's actually brought out the panel lines a bit better as well. So pretty happy with it. But I almost wrecked it for the third time.
Well, no, I think right. We'll let that cool down a little bit, and I'll quickly go through the chat just to make sure we're up to date. I'm not sure where he got to, so forgive me. Right, so budget blah 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 blah. Yeah. Oh, well done. I'm really pleased that. So should be getting some USA hangovers on for a little bit. Yeah, they'll be joining us shortly. Crazy Locos there, Mike. Say morning, all wonderful people. How are you doing? Wombat Thunder's there saying good day from Melbourne, and Wombat Creek, good day. Black Hat Scale Models are saying back in from the US stream. Good to be home, indeed. Yeah. Oh, actually, no, we're up to there, aren't we? It's already been done. Silly old Billy. Right, cool. I was paying attention, honest. Right, so now we've got to this point. We've got our top coat on. We want to reactivate the chipping fluid to bring that back into play, to take some bits and pieces off. So what we're going to use is a little bit of trusty H2O, nothing too bad. Now I've got a brush here somewhere if I can find it. And amongst all of this, not that one. Oh God, which one was it I used? Yeah, it was that one. Okay, so basically you're looking for quite a stiff brush. This is actually a brush that's got paint in it that's dried, and it's not the best in the world, but that's fine. Or you can, when you get an old brush, you can cut one down, which is, I think that's the one I used actually. So all you're going to do is dip your brush in the water a little bit, take the excess off, and then all you're going to do is you're just going to run a little circle around the water on the surface, and then you're just going to carry on that motion until you can just see the paint fading off there. And all you do is you just carry on doing that to get the effect you want and the fading of, sorry, not the fading, the chipping of what you want. If nothing starts coming off, it's because your brush is too dry and the surface is too dry. And you'll fight all day long if you don't take a little bit more water. Try and keep the moisture to a minimum. The more moisture you put on early doors, the more paint you will take off. And what you can see I'm doing is I'm just trying to be random with the chips, although it's not overly easy for me. A nice short brush like that is nice because it gives you a little bit of barrier of the hair and the actual brush handle itself, which will give you the hard surface in which you're going to be pushing against your bit. Let's take this off the clip just to make it easier to handle. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to a little bit of water. I'm just going to carry on, like I said, reactivating, making some chips, etc., etc. Take a little bit off. And as you can see, because we've used different tones of color in our preparation, when we're taking the paint off, you can suddenly see we're getting different tonal differences here in the paint that we're removing. So we're not actually chipping. What we're actually doing is we're removing some of the layer of paint of the top layer color. And the reason for that is we're going to come back at it with some pigments in a little bit to make it all nice and crusty. So obviously, I'm not making excuses when I say this, but obviously with Lesfm being ill, a little bit more hosting than Paul. Yeah. So we've got a nice bit of blobbing going on. And what I'm going to do is on this side, I'm going to really attack it because I want to take it all the way back. I don't want this blue paint on here at all. I want to make it all the way back because I want to, this area I'm going to really crust up. This is where we're up to. Oh, hang on. Let me. Oh, thank you very much. Actually, I've just suddenly thought of something which I could do to make it a little bit more exciting, effect-wise. Not what I had in mind, but see, as you can see here, we've not managed to clear the paint that's there properly because we used a bit too much water. So get a cotton bud, just roll it over the surface, and all you're doing is just taking the blue away, not the paint underneath, because that's the only thing you've activated. Okay. Right. So as you can see, nicely brought back with a bit of tonal differences coming through with the rust. And then what we're going to do is all very much flying by the seat of my pants here. What is the best way? Oh, I know what I can use. Right, okay. So on this occasion, what I'm going to use is I'm going to use a file. What one can I use that's going to be best? So I'm going to use a metal file. I mean, as I said, with what I've done there, I used a handy little tool. But all I'm going to do is I'm just going to really get into this with the file. And you can see what I'm doing is actually not only scratching the surface, but what I'm doing is trying to break some of that plastic up by digging into it. I've actually gone through to the other side because I can feel it in on my finger. So I've got a nice little hole there. And all I'm doing is just working the file around in a way in which we can make some damage. As I said, you're going to end up with lumps of plastic. All I've done is literally just run my finger over it to remove it. And then what we're going to do is make that a little bit bigger, that hole, because I want to really get in there to show that it's really basically falling apart. So here you can see I've got a little bit of plastic that's melted as I've been moving it around and stretched, and all I've done is I've just moved it to one side, but I haven't actually managed to break the plastic properly. So the bit is there. So to touch it's quite rough. Thankfully that's all I need to do. And to put the water away, we don't need that anymore, or that brush. What we do need is 3 pigment colors, a light, a medium, and a dark. This is where it all gets a bit of a nightmare. The steering wheel, etc. They're not finished, but you can see what I've done, what I've meant when I was explaining that this is basically before the blue's gone on. So it's a dark primer, like so. Now, what I need now is I need a little bit of a soft brush that we're going to use with the pigments. I need something to put the binder on, which I'll show you in a minute. So it's just a short brush. One other thing we might need is something to manipulate the pigments. Now, if you ask your girlfriend, wife, sister, they might have some of these. These are just some sponge pads. They come in handy. Always good to have.
They call them sponge puds in New Zealand, don't they, Callum?
I've got one here that I've already used. What I would suggest to you, if you do use these, don't mix the pigments. So obviously you've got one at either end. Try and make one to be one color and one the other. If you forget which one it is, they cost peanuts. So throw it away and start again. And again, if you make them wet, they do become a problem. So don't do that. Let me move that because that's going to be kicked over. So what I'm going to use as a pigment binder is this. It's pigment binder from Vallejo. A little bit of a shake. And so there we go. Right. So going back to our piece, as you can see, we've got the damage here that we're going to highlight into more crusty rust. We've made sure that any loose plastic is gone just by using our finger, and we've highlighted other areas, etc. One more thing in which you really need to make sure you do. Make sure your pet cat isn't in your room. That's the first task. You don't want to jumping up on the side and getting pigment all over and then running around the house. It'd be a nightmare. Yeah, so one thing you need to do, I've actually got an apron on to protect my clothes a little bit. I'm going to put some gloves on to protect one hand, because this hand I'm not going to use to touch the pigments. I'm going to use tools, but not anything else. So what we will do is we will, if you want to do any shout outs or any comments at any point, Mr. Marley, feel free to do so.
Refill.
I'm just going to go click on a couple of comments. I don't know if this was read, but I'll bring it up if it has been anyway. It's great to see how good modelers do this stuff. I've been doing this only a year at most, and the care you'll show for each stage shows me the way. It's very nice to hear. One of the things you'll find, none of us are ever going to criticise anybody at any stage, oh, you should get better right away, because all of us started somewhere and all of us love the journey. Hi James said hi James at Model Officer from Wombat Models. At Wombat, me also. Even in the 48 and 48, the lessons on patience have been immensely valuable from Crazy Locha. And he says, James, there's a great tip about the moisture level with the chipping. Thank you.
Yes, so yeah, just be aware. Obviously, the longer you leave your paint to set, the harder it is to chip. Now, you can make that work to your advantage. If you just want very light chips, then you need to leave it a little bit longer, because you're almost scratching the paint, making the chips yourself. That fluid's there just to help you. And as I say, don't throw loads of water over it, just a damp brush. You can actually do it with a cotton bud. You could do it with one of the sponges, if I'm honest. But obviously the cotton bud and the sponge are going to draw a lot of water, and a brush you're going to have a little bit more control over, potentially. So anyway, right. So what we'll do is we're going to, where should we start? I think we're going to start over here, and we're just going to do some very light rust on here. Now I'm going to try and zoom in as best I can, and hopefully you can see what I'm doing. There we go. So bit of pigment binder, we get our brush, dip it in, and all we're literally going to do is put a little bit like that in the areas where we want the rust. All right, like so. Now that water you had to one side, really good to keep that, like I have here. You keep that because you can wash your brush as you go with the pigment binder or whatever, with the pigment, and that way you don't get that transfer of stuff. So obviously we've got light pigment, we've got dark pigment, medium pigment and dark pigment. I've actually got them in the wrong order, would you believe? I want that the other way around. The order of how you set it out is how, whether you're left or right-handed, whether it's easy that way or the other, makes the difference. Anyway, right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little coffee stirrer, And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a bit of powder, like so. And all I'm going to do is with my finger, which is out of shot, I'm going to tap the stirrer to allow the pigment to fall off the stirrer. As you can see, it's fallen off. And then all I do is just tip that upside down like that and drop any pigment back into the lid. Then I'll go back in again and do the other bit that I have highlighted without trying to miss it completely. Now, in this case, I've dropped it completely in the wrong place, loads of pigment. Don't worry about that. Just tip it up, and you can, and it will sort itself out eventually. So we've done our first bit. Your stirrer, wipe it on the side here. So you're going into the pigment, so it's with a clean tip. Get yourself a little bit of powder. Just repeat the process. Take your time. You need to be gentle, but you also need to be firm with your stirrer in your tapping. But how you angle it and all the rest of it will give you a bit more control. So obviously I've now got a clump, as you can see there. See there, I've now got a clump on the end of my stirrer. I don't want that going into the next pigment. We'll wipe that stirrer off. Now, the next one would be the light, but I'm not going to go to the light right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have a quick look. As you can see, I've got pigment on my glove. Okay, so be wary of that because that will go everywhere. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get our brush. And all I'm going to do very gently is just tap it. Tap the pigment into where you're going. And you instantly see that you've just made all that pigment merge together, that you're pushing it into the binder, which is what you want to do. Let the binder do the work for you. Don't fight it. Now, obviously, whether we have this big clump, I don't want that in this colour, so that's why the piece of paper is there. And you just literally carry on tapping it until you're happy with it. So if you're looking for like a fine coating, and obviously push it down until you get that. If you want it, so there's a little bit of lumps in there, so you can see the corrosion coming through, like you have here, for example. You can probably see that just about. I've only tapped that a little bit just to push the pigment into the binder, whereas here, as I've given it a little bit more of a push, and it's now much more a surface covering. Okay. All you do is just carry on doing that very, very lightly with your brush. Don't worry if you've got pigment in the wrong place. And then what you do is you literally go to where your paper is. In this case, it's there. And I just tip it over, tap the hand, back of the hand with my clean hand. And that'll kick off any pigment that you don't need. What I am going to do is wipe that finger, because that will go everywhere. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the same brush. I'm not going to add any more pigment yet, but I'm just going to bring that pigment down the side here by just literally very lightly brushing the edge to see if anything transfers down. If it doesn't, and it's not giving you the effect you want, you can add a little bit more pigment. It's not a problem. So there we go. That's the first two bits there of pigment that we've got on there to simulate a little bit of rust. Now, we want it to make it look like it's got new rust coming through. It's not all just old. You get the lighter pigment, and again, you follow the same procedure we've just already outlined. And what we do is tap that very gently, a couple of sprinkles in there. That's all you need. Put the rest in the box. Grab your brush. And again, all you're doing is just pushing down the pigment to give that color variation, nothing more. And there you go. It's that easy, that subtle, and that simple. All right. So obviously I want to do this bit, which is really cruddy. So we're just going to use the same process, but we're just going to be a little bit a little bit clever in what we do. So pigment binder, where we've broken up the surface and made it all cruddy, we're going to put lots of pigment binder on there. Obviously, that is way too much I put on there. So just wash our brush, make sure it's not there. We will get a cotton bud, and we're just going to hover it over the top, take some of that pigment binder off, or move it around, whichever works for you. I'm doing both as I talk to you. Obviously, in the physical damage that we've made, we couldn't see our hole because it was full of fluid. So what we've done is just pop the cotton bud in there and it will absorb it all. So give that a couple of seconds. And then what we're going to do is repeat exactly the same process we did a second ago. I'm going to start with the old. I'll move the lid over so it's a little bit easier. And I'm just going to tap my finger like so, very badly, missing everything that I actually want it where it to go.
And yeah, I've got the Edward photo which I'm throwing in there as well.
A little bit of pigment at a time, just build it up. Oh, way too much. Build it up until you've got a basic amount there. Then we're going to move on to our middle color, middle tone. And we're going to do exactly the same thing again. The problem is if you tap the finger too hard, it just goes all over your gloves, not over where you actually want it. So there we go. I think that's reasonable. We're going to get our brush and do exactly what we just did a minute ago, but we're not going to spend an awful lot of time on it. All we're going to do is just push it into the binder as best we can, so we know it's taking up some of the tackiness. And then what we're going to do, we just clean our brush as well, just to make sure there's nothing too much on there. And then what we're going to do very carefully is we're going to get a binder brush. Try and do it so that the fluid runs down your brush. And we're just going to add a little bit more fluid here and there because we want to build that up. And again, like I say, that water comes in handy because you can clean your brush straight away. No binder on there, no other stuff. And we're just going to go back and repeat the process that we just did. Dark rust first. And what you're actually aiming for is you're aiming for those big lumpy bits that you had down here that you push down to actually soak up the binder and become a lump on the surface. This is where I wish I was a bit more Blue Peter. And then we're going to go with our medium. That's a good example. Okay, so now what you can see there is you've got really big lumps of pigment, way more than you need. Okay, you are going to lose some in this process, unfortunately. That's part of the process. So just turn it over, give it a good tap. Some will fall on, but some will stay exactly where it is, as you can see. So that's nice and crusty now. Oh, hang on. There's the camera. Focus. Yeah, it's nice and crusty now. So we've got our dark old rust, our medium, it's getting there, getting to be old rust. We want to make it look a little bit more special. So what we do is we'll dip our, clean our end of our, stir it, get a little bit of that more brighter color, and literally one tap. Okay, that's more than one tap. A couple of taps, there we go, that's what I was looking for. We've got a little bit in amongst everything else. This bit obviously is not in the binder, so if you turn it over, tap your hand, it's gone. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we just get our brush and we're just going to very gently introduce a little bit of pressure to the crustiness of our rust. very, very, very lightly. And the reason we're doing it that way is because we want to make sure that the binder has picked up all the pigment that's there. And if it hasn't, we're pushing in the different colors to make it some variance. Now, this is a good example of what I mean. So on the top here, you'll see, oh, that way, come on, wake up. So on the top here, you'll see, if I get a pointy device, just here on this side, the pigment has reacted just how you want it to. It's taken up the powder, brilliant. On this side, you will see that there is a glossy shine to it, which means you've not got enough pigment on there. Your binder is still there. Now, you can do one or two things. You can add a bit more pigment, depending on how you want the rust to be, or you can let it dry. Either or, it doesn't matter. In this occasion, I'm just going to let it dry because I'm happy with that result. But bear in mind, as you're handling it, doing other bits of rust around, that is still going to be active. Okay, so if you stick your thumb in it or whatever, it's going to be a bit of a pain. As you can see, I've been handling these edges and this hasn't moved. This is exactly how I left it at this side. So until that's dried, you need to bear that in mind. Now, the other thing in which I wanted to point out as well here, just on where this cap is, you've got a little bit of pigment that you didn't really want it there. So you're just going to use your brush and you're just going to almost without touching brush across the top to remove that excess pigment away from what you're doing, and you've got the pigment all in the right place. Simple as that. What do you think?
Pretty
I think
good.
that looks amazing. As the Crazy Loacher says, I wouldn't want to miss a tutorial like this for nothing.